Hey, good morning and welcome to SportsBeat Live, the Kansas City Stars Chiefs program. We're coming to you from snowy Kansas City as I look out the window beyond the computer, the desk of the great reporter Glenn Rice. There's snow on the windshield, so it's gone from rain to snow already this morning. Looks like we're going to get some more snow today, and pretty darn cold next week from what I see. So, but it won't be cold at the Super Bowl in Tampa on Sunday. Going to be rainy from what I hear, but not cold. But hey, we're here to talk Chiefs with you. Please send us your questions and comments for the last show before the Super Bowl. We'll do one after the game, but this will be the last one we do before the Chiefs take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday in Tampa, Florida. And we talk Chiefs with you and with the people that know the team best, starting with our columnist Sam Mellinger and Vahe Gregorian. They are in the house. Good morning, guys.
What's up?
Morning, Blair. Morning, Sam.
Vahe, did you finish up the Sudoku?
I got to a good place. You know, they always say when you leave a story that you're writing, leave it in the middle of a sentence so you come back to the same thought. So, which may or may not be desirable, but yeah, I'm getting there.
I leave many of my stories in mid-thought. So, and we'll soon be joined by Sam McDowell. And today, once again, we will miss the visage and voice of Herbie Teope, and he has a good reason for missing today's show. He is out covering practice. He's at the Chiefs practice, and we will catch up certainly with Herbie after the game. Sam McDowell's here. Good morning, Sam.
Hey, guys.
So let's catch up a little bit on the news. We'll start with the injury report. Herbie is not here to do that, so I think we'll collectively get it done. We know the two players will not be participating in the Super Bowl. Left tackle Eric Fisher, linebacker Willie Gay Jr. That's been known and well reported. On the injury report, with limited participation on Wednesday, the last time we had the injury report, were wide receiver Sammy Watkins and who else the other? Le'Veon Bell, the running back. I kind of expect both of them to be ready for the game. Does anybody have any different sense? It just seems like Watkins has declared himself healthy.
I think that Sam Mellinger's expression sort of says it all, right? I mean, I think I have every reason to think he'll play, but also every reason to be a little skeptical of whether he'll play at all, but in fact how well he'll be able to go, right? Just because it's been a bit of a recurring pattern and has seemed to go a week or two past what you might anticipate all the time with him.
Right.
Sammy said that he was very optimistic he would play. I don't see him sitting out.
Okay. Again, we take your questions and comments, and Dan Walden wants to know if I'll be working from the Mellinger's house when they close down the Star Building. I think we all will, and not just the sports staff, but the entire Kansas City Star staff will be working out of the Mellinger mansion.
Is that right? Where is that?
Hey, look, we've got a lease back deal going here and a little closer. So, let's talk after the show.
Okay. We'll all take turns pitching in, taking care of the kids and doing what it takes to get the job done.
Well, if that's part of the deal, you can come over here.
Oh, hey. So the other piece of news, I'll pose it in the form of a question: Is anybody had a problem with their barber in the pandemic times? Has anybody had an issue getting a haircut or put off getting a haircut for an extended period? Or I know Vahe doesn't shave that often. He goes at least 2 or 3 days without shaving, as we can currently see. But how about the barber? Who knew that a barber would be the story of the week for the Chiefs? So any traction to that story? It certainly was a big buzz yesterday. And the last we heard, Daniel Kilgore was apparently in the barber's chair when the alarms went off, and he and Demarcus Robinson, I guess, were contact traced and have been sitting out of practice this week. Any reason to be concerned about this story?
Can I just say, like, is it not strange that they were letting this guy cut hair without the test coming back? Like, we'll just get the results back, like, after you've cut a few guys' hair and just flip a coin here. Like, it's just, that part of it was like, I mean,
it is funny because I think, look, we've seen the operation work pretty well, we think, through the course of the season, at least in terms of results. So then you sort of start assuming they've got this remarkable science and process down, to absolutely the T, and then this.
Seems so weird. Like, I just like, get the, especially if he's been tested and the results are coming. Like, I just, what's the upside here of just getting in there and getting your hair? It's so weird. I can't believe they did that. And it's also like the most pandemic football thing ever, because like a scary haircut before March 12th of last year just meant like, they took too much off or whatever. And now it's like your stomach drops. You're like, oh my God, did they get to Mahomes? It's just such a weird world that we're in right now.
So Terrence Wardle Robinson wants to know how the haircuts are looking. I think that's the big question, and we'll see on Sunday. Maybe that'll be part of the practice report that Herbie Teope files today. And he also asked, wasn't the barber as well as the players wearing masks? They absolutely were. In fact, I heard the barber was double masked. Maybe he had the shield on along with the with the mask. So I really don't expect much to come of it, but it's still a stay tuned moment. And it's funny. My image was of 20 players sitting in a barber shop, just hanging out, reading magazines. Like the State Farm commercial with Mahomes and his brother and everybody, just everybody hanging out, and it's probably not how it went.
And then the test comes back and they just scatter. They're just like knocking, it's like Costanza in the fire, they're just knocking each other over.
Costanza from the fire.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's catch up on some Super Bowl topics here. And I want to start with actually a tweet that I read just earlier today. And Melly, it's something that you addressed. And apparently, and I guess I didn't realize this, the Chiefs are going to have no special plays for the Super Bowl.
You know what was amazing about that is that Andy Reid said that with mostly a straight face.
I like that you
Never
pointed
been a
out.
more obvious lie.
It was good that you pointed out that it was mostly a straight face, though.
Yeah. But it was just like, I was expecting him to like smile or giggle or something. And he was just like, I think he was annoyed at the question. But like, Karen Kornacki, she's been doing this forever. Like it's a softball for Andy to just be like, we might have a thing or two, but I'm not going to tell you here. Like, that's all she was going for, right? And it's like Andy took it as like she was asking for the play design or something.
We know this by now. There's a big difference between Thursday Andy before a Super Bowl and let's say Monday Andy. Yeah. I had thought yesterday about getting on with Andy for something I'm working on regarding Chiefs history. And my question was going to be that last year he told us there's some plays named for Hank Stram in his playbook. And I was going to ask him, not for any play design, but if he could just give us one example of one name of one play. And I thought that's not worth the time waiting on hold because he's not going to say anything at all to help me because it was Thursday Andy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Like I've also noticed in these situations, and I think this is strategy on his part. But if you ask two questions at once, if you just say, instead of waiting, I've got to follow up. If you ask two questions at once, he's going to pick the one that he wants to answer and ignore the other one.
That is so true. Hey, Blair, when you referred to Twitter, though, I started smiling, and it was a Mellinger related thing. And I thought you were going to talk about this. Sam had the first tweet of the day that I read was regarding a Frank Clark, Johnny Cueto comparison.
Yeah, it was got that written down. I was going to go to that next.
It was a great tweet as it was, but it was really made by the hashtag make fun of glove thing.
I did like the comparison though. I thought it's pretty apt, right?
There's something there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a little bit, what's the opposite of generous? It's generous to Johnny Cueto, I guess, because Frank Clark has been much better overall body of work for the Chiefs than Cueto was for the Royals. But I think that there is an apt comparison in that Cueto, the Royals needed him twice, and that was it. And he was borderline garbage in the other however many stars he had for them. But the 2 times they needed him, God, he was nails. He was absolutely terrific. And Clark he's been fine as a player for the Chiefs. Like, he hasn't been garbage. He hasn't been bad. He's been good, but he hasn't been first round draft pick, huge contract. He hasn't been that except in the playoffs. And
Right.
They absolutely, I don't think they win that Super Bowl. I mean, you could say this about, he's not the only one. You could say this about a handful of guys, but I think he's one of the guys that they don't win the Super Bowl last year without. And he's been good in the postseason again. There's a playoff Frank. I think we're starting to see that.
Yeah, look, I for a team that went 14-2 in the regular season, they seem to get along okay without playoff Frank during the regular season. Now that the postseason is here, it hasn't he had a sack in each of the 2 games, and I just see him around the quarterback more than I did during the regular season. I don't know if it's akin to, you remember in the pre-Mahomes days of covering the Chiefs, and it got to the point where like players like Justin Houston and Eric Berry would never practice, right? They were always on the injury report listed as, just did not practice. They'd make up some injury, but then they'd answer the gun on game day. Maybe Frank Clark's getting that sort of preferential veteran treatment the way those guys did back in the day.
Well, he's going to have a big game, I think, because the way to disrupt Tom Brady is to pressure him up the middle. And obviously the Bucs are aware of their own quarterback's weakness, so they double team the middle a lot. When you go back and watch the film of the first Bucs-Chiefs matchup, Chris Jones was getting double teamed damn near every play. And so that means Frank Clark is going to have some one-on-one matchups on the outside. And, Tom Brady gets rid of the ball quickly. If you're going to win on the outside and disrupt him, you got to do it quickly. So I view Frank Clark as one of the key players to this game on Sunday.
Patty Dyer McMurray says on Twitter, Clark said he's simmering. That's a good way to describe it. I like that. Hey, but let's stick with the defense and what needs to happen on Sunday for the Chiefs to come out with a win. I absolutely agree that getting pressure on Tom Brady is of paramount importance, and better to come up the middle than from the outside, which is where the Chiefs have been putting pressure on Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen in the playoffs with those corner and safety blitzes. So how is it going to work if the Chiefs continue to dial up some pressure, which has been successful in the playoffs? Can it come from the outside, or does it have to be twisted and stunted so it comes up the middle? And how does that impact Chris Jones and Frank Clark?
Well, I think.
Go ahead, Sam.
Well, if you time it right, some of their biggest plays were pressure from the outside. And I'm thinking specifically of the Bashaud Breeland interception. And that was, if I remember right, it was a blitz that brought 6, I think. But Tyrann Mathieu was the guy on Brady's, arm side over the right tackle. Mathieu was the one that came through on the outside, and he didn't get a sack. I don't even know if he hit Brady, but he certainly made Brady throw the ball a little bit quicker, and it was
bothered him.
The velocity was off, and Breeland made a strong play on the ball. So you can do it, but if you do that blitz on the outside and it's a quick slant, where the ball's out of his hands in a second and a half, then it doesn't matter. But so it's got to be on the right snap. But they just need to, Brady's numbers. It's ridiculous the difference. On Pro Football Focus, if you look at it, when he's pressured and when he's not, everybody's better when they're not pressured. But there's a huge gap with him, absolutely enormous.
Well, it's not about sacks, Sam. It's just about affecting the quarterback.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
I being someone who likes shiny things that you can remember easily, I'm still thinking about Spag's line the other day that they have to not let Brady read the mail. And I think it's a nice visual, and it really does make you realize the game within the game within the game It's going to be not just how they can execute, obviously, but to what degree their disguises are kind of effective. And I think that really matters with Brady.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point. That's why a guy like Tyrann Mathieu is a great guy to have for a game like this, because he's a guy that can sort of deceive that he's doing one thing and still get into his assignment and do another.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, at times this year, the back end of the Chiefs defense has been phenomenal, just phenomenal. And I think one of the reasons is Tyrann Mathieu's allowed to roam and play where he wants, line up where he wants, and read what he wants, and isn't assigned a spot. So, on the other hand, the place where I think the Chiefs have been vulnerable throughout the year by several teams is deep middle. Now, maybe that's true of all teams, but it just seems like, I think of the touchdowns, the long touchdown passes that the Raiders completed at Arrowhead, and just sometimes, sometimes the overthrows, but there have been a couple of instances this year where the receiver had gotten beyond the coverage and deep middle was available. And Brady is the master at that, especially if it's Gronkowski. Could be one of his fast receivers, Scotty Miller or Evans. But Gronk usually deep middle, getting past a linebacker can be available to the Bucs, and I think that's where the pressure up the middle is of just paramount importance for the Chiefs.
Yeah, to add on to that, Blair, that's why a guy like Juan Thornhill playing really well over the past couple of weeks could help. We saw him break up almost that exact type of pass against the Bills last week. And our own Jesse Newell wrote about him this week on one of the Zoom calls, and he said he's finally feeling 100% healthy since last year's ACL injury. He was completely different, I thought, against the Chargers in Week 17, and then also against the Bills in the AFC Championship game than the guy we saw in the first 3+ months of the season.
He was unbelievable against the Bills. I think that's his best game in the NFL. He was absolutely terrific, and I think that when he's like that, I think it frees up Tyrann to do even more, because now he doesn't have as much sort of center field responsibility if Thornhill's back there with him.
The play
He's got to be one of the best. Got to be one of the best situational guys in the league.
That's right.
I'm just going to add the play I think of when I think of his game was one he took a little criticism for, but supposedly should have handled that interception. But what I remember about that play was him going with the move and being velcroed to the receiver in coverage, and 50-50 on as he lands with that ball. I thought that was a good play by him. Yeah,
it would have been an excellent interception if he came down with it. But the impressive part of that too is I forgot the receiver who he was running with, but he came down like he was sort of deep-ish, and he came down to take. It was either. Was a running back sort of out of the backfield. He came down toward the line of scrimmage, had to plant, turn, change directions, and sprint down the sideline with the guy. That was a hell of a play.
Yeah, that was it. That you spoke to it a lot better than I did. I do think it was a running back too, coming out on a little delay.
Yeah, that was the top option on that play. He had to work his way around some traffic that was kind of an intended pick play on that too.
Yeah.
Brian LeBurge reminds us it was Cole Beasley on the
it was. But he faked a wide receiver screen and then went out on a wheel route.
Mm-hmm.
You guys make great points about Juan Thornhill, though. If this is if this is the Juan Thornhill of last year, especially toward the end of last year, that we're getting in the playoffs, and a reminder, he's playing in his first Super Bowl, right? I mean, he didn't get to play last year in the playoffs, so he should be extra amped for this game.
That brings up kind of an interesting point, though. Those guys that couldn't play, like Alex Okafor, Juan Thornhill, who both are playing on Sunday, watch the game from the stands. And I've just always wondered about that dynamic. Like, can they not dress in street clothes and just at least get a sideline view of the Super Bowl? I mean, they did contribute for 17 weeks, right?
Yeah, it seems like there should be an exception for that, huh? Or maybe they force them to wear a uniform, even though, just so they can blend.
Boy, in college football, that's why you have 150 people on the sideline. They're all there. And but yeah, it's more like the NHL where the healthy scratches go up into the hockey press box.
I'm just like thinking of like covering a high school game like a few years ago, and there's like Johnny's mom knew the concession stand worker, so she gets a field pass, and everybody's on the field. And like Juan Thornhill played 17 games last year, could not get on the field for the Super Bowl.
Blair, that also reminds me of one of our favorite Mitch Morse stories. When he was out, I can't remember if it was a leg injury or a concussion, but he was sent up to the press box to watch the game and basically came over to start watching the game with us. Like,
sat down with us, yeah.
I remember that was the leg injury because he came over in that sort of like not really a wheelchair, but kind of.
Yeah. And he didn't want to move around much. He kind of nestled in, and I think the Chiefs had to tap him on the shoulder and tell him he needed to go watch.
All right, let's talk about the offense and do it in terms of a couple of prop bets. God, I have read so much email this week about prop bets. I am prop betted out. But two of them involving Patrick Mahomes I wanted to ask you about because I think those are germane to the game. Over-under on Patrick Mahomes' passing yards is 318.5, and touchdown passes is 2.5. Keep in mind, this is what his sixth, seventh, whatever it is, playoff game. Maybe more than that. He's 6-1, right, in playoff games. Yeah, 1-1, 3-0, 2-0. Yeah, 6-1. He's only thrown for over 300 yards twice. One of them was last week or 2 weeks ago against the Bills. So if he's throwing for 318.5 and 2.5 touchdowns, and bode well for the Chiefs, or do the Chiefs need more production against this defense than let's just say 318 yards and 3 touchdowns?
I like it if he's going for big numbers. I mean, I think that's what did he go for in week 12? I mean, it was
462.
Yeah, that was he had 318. By the end of the first quarter, and it was all
three touchdowns by the end of the first quarter.
Yeah,
so the same
the
guy.
Touchdowns are weird because the way the Chiefs play, his touchdown passes depend a lot just based on whether the weird underhand pass is technically forward or behind the line of scrimmage or whatever. They're not that's not like a lot of them are just not the classic attacking downfield 70 yards to Tyreek or something like that. It's these weird Ferrari right and everything else.
Or whether he hands off or flips the jet sweep, right?
Yeah. The fact that those jet sweeps count as touchdown passes, that's an untold story of that MVP season is just how many of those were basically handoffs.
Have you guys ever broken down that number? I haven't.
I think we did in 18. I think we did back then, but I forgot what it was. But I meant that Chargers game in particular.
Yeah, it was like 4 of them, or 3 out of 4 or something.
Yeah.
Sam McDowell broke down the 50 touchdown passes that year, didn't you, Sam? For special
executive? Yeah, I'd put that out of my memory. Thanks, Blair.
You volunteered for that too, I think.
To get to your question, Blair, I think the Chiefs need him to get to those numbers. I mean, I realize what you said about his playoff stats, but I think he's around 316 for the regular season. I'm thinking if I'm the Bucs, if I'm the Bucs and I hold him under both of those numbers, I'm probably feeling pretty good about my chances because, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is the Chiefs' best option no matter who they're playing, but particularly against this team in this secondary. This is where the Chiefs have to win. I mean, if the Chiefs don't win in their passing game, they're not going to win on Sunday.
Yeah.
Well, they certainly carved up the Bucs during the regular season, but
one Buck in particular.
Yeah. Carlton Davis, and but Bucs are coming off a playoff victory in which they sacked Aaron Rodgers 5 times. Rodgers ended up with good passing numbers, right? Big, productive, well over 300 yards passing. But the narrative this week in Tampa Bay has been speed of the linebackers, right? Devin White and Levante David, the power of the pass rush with Shaq Barrett and JPP, But it's the back end of the Bucs defense that is ripe to be taken advantage of. And so I think one of the keys to Sunday for the Chiefs is the ability for Patrick Mahomes to get the ball out quickly. We've gotten a lot of questions from folks about the offensive line and how Remmers and Wiley are going to hold up at tackle. I think that becomes a non-issue if the ball comes out quickly and routes develop quickly, and you take full advantage of Hill's and Hardman's speed. And I went back. I don't know if you guys have done this. I went back and watched at least the elongated version of the highlights of the Week 12 victory, and at least I saw every one of Mahomes' completions, and a lot of those passes happened quickly, absolutely quickly. And even the 75-yarder to Hill, that didn't take long at all for the ball to get out of Mahomes' hands, and that's one of the reasons he doesn't get sacked that much. And of course, there's the great stat where he's got the top NFL QB rating against pressure. So don't you think Todd Bowles has a decision to make this week about how they want to defend the Chiefs passing game?
Yeah, there's a lot of cat and mouse with that because, those quick passes that you're talking about, if you can draw, the safeties, the D-backs closer to the line of scrimmage, that's when you can attack. One of the touchdowns, I think it was the one that ended up being the backflip touchdown to Tyreek, was that because they got Tyreek isolated. Was it even a linebacker? They got him isolated against a guy who was much slower. I mean, I realize you can say that about everybody in the NFL, but the guy was much slower than Tyreek. It was that kind of seam sort of crossing, I don't know what you call it, route. And that's how you do it. That's how Tyreek starts backflipping.
Yeah, that was against Carlton Davis as well. He had a rough quarter.
Yeah.
He needed a hug. That was brutal.
Hey, Blair, you're right that there's been a lot of talk about these linebackers, and they are good linebackers and fast, but if there's been talk about them matching up with Travis Kelce, and I don't see that. I don't see any linebacker in the league being able to cover Travis Kelce. It's not just his speed that makes him a difficult matchup. I mean, it's his agility and quickness within his routes that if they're going to guard Travis Kelce one-on-one with one of those linebackers because they feel like they've got the speed to keep up with them, Kelsey's going to have a huge day.
Hey, just one thing. I hope you guys can clarify this for me because I don't really know how this works. Those stats on average time of release, they're based on every play, every pass play, right? So that would not just be pocket plays, but it would also include the plays that Patrick ad-libs and extends. So in some ways, I wonder if the more true measure of that stat would be in instances when you're in the pocket, right? Because I think that's the pure point there is, okay, snap to quarterback, get rid of ball, and then there's the other plays.
I believe, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud without double checking, but I believe that time is release or breaks the pocket, I think.
Okay.
Or gets sacked or whatever,
Yeah. Okay.
Aaron Martin says definitely take the over on the passing yards. Several others have said that too. I totally agree. I think that it's going to be one of those games where Mahomes will rack up some numbers, and simply because I think it's going to be a higher scoring game, a lot of back and forth. The forecast calls for rain during the day in Tampa, but dry at night. So field conditions shouldn't play a factor in the game. Okay, let's pivot to something else. We didn't cover this at the top, but it is newsworthy and a piece of news that broke yesterday, and that is former Chiefs coach Marty Schottenheimer entering hospice care. And of course, we know he's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and it's given us an opportunity to reflect on Schottenheimer's career and his decade with the Chiefs. I'll just say that I want to get all you guys' take on Marty. But I came to Kansas City the same year Marty did, 1989, and I can remember, following the NFL before I got here, and the Chiefs were just inconsequential. They were never on TV, and when you saw highlights, there was never anybody at Arrowhead Stadium. But from the moment Carl Peterson got here and hired Marty Schottenheimer in 1989. Arrowhead Stadium just changed. The Chiefs changed, and Arrowhead Stadium changed, and I think that's the capacity crowds at Arrowhead, the tailgating, all of that started in 1989, and the first few years that Marty Schottenheimer was here, and that's because they turned those Chiefs teams into competitive division-winning teams. Red Fridays started here, and it started in that era. So I absolutely fondly remember that decade. Several of the playoff losses were painful. That's because he had created great teams and great expectations, and when they lost at home in the playoffs, they were crushing for Chiefs fans. But I think Marty Schottenheimer absolutely deserves his place in the Chiefs Hall of Fame, and those were good times in the 90s. And I know both Sam Mellinger and Sam McDowell, you were kind of growing up in that time, weren't you, and following the Chiefs then?
Yeah, I mean, him and Carl both, and I don't know, how to separate that necessarily, but I mean, they changed the Chiefs. I mean, like if you're 30, between the ages of like 30 and 60 or 35, whatever, I mean, I think that the 90s kind of defined how you came to think of the Chiefs. Because you're right, like in the 70s and 80s, that was 20 years of them being irrelevant. And those teams just completely got made over from, the atmosphere with making it college and tailgating and noise and all that to, competitive, tough teams. They were going to hit the quarterback often. They're going to run between the tackles. They're going to play action. I mean, you kind of knew what you were going to get. And he absolutely, I mean, we can talk about Mahomes doing that now, and we do, and we will continue to. But those teams in the 90s, made a lot of people in and around Kansas City love football. I mean, he changed the Chiefs, and in a lot of ways changed Kansas City.
Yeah, just looking through the numbers yesterday of his career, he finished first or second back when the divisions were 5 teams, the AFC West. He finished first or second all of his first 9 years, and then he picks fourth, and the two part ways. And I've always felt like Marty had sort of a weird thing where his last 3 stops, the team should have tried all they could to hold on to him for longer. He got fired from the Chargers after going 14-2 because he didn't win the playoff game. The Redskins, I think he got fired after 1 year after going maybe 8-8, but I think he won his last 5 games. And with the Chiefs, it was just like he had one bad year, and suddenly it was time for a change. And all 3 franchises in the immediacy were not as good as they were when they had Marty Schottenheimer. I think that's just a testament to how valuable he was.
Yeah, that's a smart point.
All the things you guys are saying really resound, and I keep thinking also of this with Marty, like but for a twist or a turn here, he's a Super Bowl coach a couple times, and just some remarkable snake bitten moments in that are part of what informed you guys feelings about the Chiefs, right, growing up and getting on into your 20s, where like, well, this is how they are, they lose in the postseason. But when I didn't realize he was 101, 58-1 as the head coach in the regular season. I thought it'd be more like 90-70. And so obviously he did great things here, but I do keep thinking there's a little parallel there with Marty being Marty and Andy Reid. Like at one point they were matched up in total wins, and both had the stigma, for lack of a better term, of being the best coaches never to go to a Super Bowl. And then Andy got to this time. And I feel like in some little parallel universe somewhere that happened for Marty with a breakthrough, and things were different in his broader legacy.
Some of the breaks that he had in the playoffs, I mean, obviously we know a lot about the Chiefs, but Cleveland too. I mean, just some absolutely brutal, not the coach's fault, but God, it seemed to follow him around kind of stuff. The only thing, like when you were going through that, the 8-8 getting fired from Washington, you get fired from Washington, that's a gift. You don't have to work there anymore, and they keep paying you. That's a gift.
Hey, one thing he did, he flipped the Truman Sports Complex, because it was Royals. Yeah. It was Royals until Marty and Carl got here, and then it was Chiefs. And Vahe, I know you and I have written stories about it. And Sam. They never seem to be good at the same time, right? And only in the only when the Royals came back in 14 and 15 with Andy Reid that they you had parallel good teams at the sports complex.
Well, you're making me think. Not only did they never seem to be good at the same time, they were often bad at the same time.
Too often. So, okay, hey, so this is the part where we plug the star what we've got coming up, but starting with two special sections in Sunday's print editions. I cannot wait to open those up and read the two of them. I think it's about 50 pages of additional Chiefs coverage coming to you in the Sunday edition of the Kansas City Star. And Vahe, you have a column coming up Sunday where you have spoken to Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, and that had to have been fun talking to LDT.
It was fun, and we've had him in group Zooms a time or two over the last year, or I got him on the phone once or twice, but yesterday was a one-on-one Zoom, and it reminds you just how much more regular a conversation is when you're looking at the person. And as all of us have experienced with him, what a fascinating, thoughtful guy, and he spoke about some things in ways I hadn't heard him say before, and we got into a little bit about how the ways he's going to watch the Super Bowl this year versus the way he watched it last year or participated last year. So yeah, we'll have that in that section on Sunday.
And we're going to tease a little bit of that audio on the SportsBeat KC podcast for Friday. Also on Friday, dropping is the Mellinger Minutes for your ears. Sam, who's the guest on Friday?
We're going to have Rick Stroud, who has only covered the Bucs for 30 years for the Tampa Bay Times. And Rick, I was just reading about him a little bit. Rick once Ray Perkins, back when that's how far back he goes, Ray Perkins called Rick to ask him if he was fired. And Rick was the one who told him yes. So that is how good, that is how well Rick knows the Bucs. So it was a really cool conversation. I learned a lot.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that. That should be out sometime tomorrow before noon. Mellinger Minutes for your ears, the Sam's podcast. Let's see. There are one or two other things. Just first of all, I want to thank our sponsor, the University of Kansas Health System, for coming aboard and being the sponsor for this show and certainly the one on Sunday after the game, which is the next time we will talk to you guys. And one other thing to plug, and I know it's already in the system because when I woke up this morning, I saw a note from Vahe that from 2:45 a.m. that his 53-man thumbnail is in the system, so ready to go for Sunday, I suppose. Vahe wrote a piece on each of the 53 players on the roster. I'm just going to say, Vahe, I'm better you than me doing that.
Well, let me flip that on you and say that, as Andy Reid likes to say, everybody had a piece of that. There was a lot of good hamburger helper from all three of you guys, and from Herbie too, to help make that souffle or whatever hamburger helper goes in.
Well, my best help on that was telling you not to do it, not to volunteer.
All right, you guys. Great conversation. Thank you so much, everybody, for weighing in with your question and comments. Please join us after the Super Bowl, a couple hours after the game on Sunday, and we will we'll talk maybe Super Bowl champion for a second straight season. So for Sam Mellinger, Sam McDowell, Vahe Gregorian, Herbie Tiopi, and our producer Beth Welsh, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again after the Super Bowl.